In the interior is concealed the wooden pulpit from which St. Peter preached, and immediately beside this we find a pillar of white marble, said to have belonged to Solomon's temple at Jerusalem. The lions on the monument of Clement XIII, by Canova, are considered the finest that were ever sculptured. I was fortunate enough to penetrate into the catacombs of St. Peter's, a favor which women rarely obtain, and which I only owed to my having been a pilgrim at Jerusalem. These catacombs consist of handsome passages and pillars of masonry, which do not, however, exceed 8 or 9 feet in height. A number of sarcophagi, containing the remains of emperors and popes, are here deposited. The roof of St. Peter's covers an immense area, and is divided into a number of cupolas, chambers, and buildings. A fountain of running water is even found here. From this roof we have a splendid view as far as the sea and the Apennines. We can descry the entire Vatican, which adjoins the church, as well as the Pope's gardens. I ascended to the ball in the great cupola, where there is nothing to be seen, as there is not the slightest opening, much less a window, left in it. Nothing is to be gained by mounting into this dark, narrow receptacle but the glory of being able to say, "I have been there." It is far more interesting to look down from the windows and galleries of the great cupola into the body of the church itself, for then we can estimate the grandeur of the colossal building, and the people who walk about beneath appear like dwarfs. 2 noble fountains deck the square in front of St. Peter's, and in the midst towers a magnificent obelisk from Heliopolis, said to weigh 992,789 pounds. Near this obelisk are 2 slabs, by standing on either of which we can see all the rows of columns melted as it were into one. My journey to Jerusalem also obtained for me an audience of the Pope. His Holiness received me in a great hall adjoining the Sistine Chapel. Considering his great age of 78 years, the Pope still has a noble presence and most amiable manners. He asked me some questions, gave me his blessing, and permitted me at parting to kiss the embroidered slipper. My second walk was to the Vatican. Here I saw the immense halls of Raphael, the staircases of Bramante and Bernini, and the Sistine Chapel, containing Michelangelo's masterpieces, the world-renowned frescoes. The immense wall behind the high altar represents the Last Judgment, while the ceilings are covered with prophets and sibyls. The picture gallery contains many works of the great masters, as does also the gallery of vases and candelabra. The Biga chamber. The Biga is an antique carriage of white marble, drawn by 2 horses. In the gallery of statues the figure representing Nero as Apollo playing on the lyre is the finest. In the gallery of busts those of Menelaus and Jupiter preeminently attract attention. The name of the Laocoon cabinets indicates the masterpiece it contains, as also the cabinet of the Apollo Belvedere. The latter statue was found in Nero's baths at Porto d'Anzio. The celebrated torso of the Belvedere, a fragment of Greek art, which Michael partly used as his model, is placed in the square vestibule. Never was flesh so pliably counterfeited in stone as in this masterpiece. A long gallery contains a series of tapestries, the designs for which were drawn by Raphael. The Vatican contains 10,000 rooms, 20 large halls, 8 large and about 200 small staircases. The Quirinal Palace, the summer residence of the Pope, lies on the hill of the same name, Monte Cavallo, which is quite covered with villas and beautiful houses, on account of the salubrity of the air. I visited most of the private palaces and picture galleries. The principal are, the Colonna Palace, on the Quirinal Hill, the Barberini Palace, where we find a portrait of Raphael's mistress, Fornarina, painted by himself, and an original picture of Beatrice Cenci, by Guido Steri. The finest of all the Roman palaces is that of the Borghese. From its form, which resembles a piano, this building has obtained the name of Il Cembalo de Borghese. The gallery contains 1,600 paintings, most of them masterpieces by celebrated artists. The Farnese Palace is remarkable for its architecture, and the Stoppani for its architect, Raphael. Besides these, there are many other palaces. I saw but few villas, for the weather was generally bad, and it rained almost every day. I visited the Villa Borghese on a Sunday, when there is a great bustle here, for a stream of people on foot, on horseback, and in carriages, sets in towards its beautiful park, situate just beyond the Piazza del Popolo, on the same way that the crowds flock to our beloved Prater on a fine day in spring. I also saw the Villa Medicis and the Villa Pamphili. The latter boasts a very extensive park. I took care to visit most of the churches. My plan was to go out early in the morning, and to inspect several churches until about 11 o'clock, when it was time to repair to the galleries. When I went to the principal churches, for instance, those of St. John of Lateran, St. Paul, St. Maria Maggiore, St. Louis, and St. Sebastian, I was always accompanied by a guide specially appointed to conduct strangers to the churches. I could fill volumes with the description of the riches and magnificence they display. The church of St. John of Lateran possesses the wooden altar at which St. Peter is said to have read Mass, the wooden table at which Jesus sat to eat the Last Supper, and the heads of the disciples Peter and Paul. Near this church, in a building specially constructed for it, is the Scala Santa, Holy Staircase, which was brought from Jerusalem and deposited here. This is a flight of 28 steps of white marble, covered with boards, which no one is allowed to ascend or descend in the regular way, every man being required to shuffle up and down on his knees. Near this holy stair a common one is built, which it is lawful to ascend in the regular way. The Basilica of St. Paul lies beyond the gate of the same name, in a very insalubrious neighborhood. It is only just rebuilt, after having been destroyed by fire. The Basilica Maria Maggiore, in which is deposited the Holy Gate, has the highest belfry in Rome, and above its portico we see a beautiful chamber where the new Pope stands to dispense the first blessing among the people. In the chapel of the Crucifix 5 pieces of the wood of the Saviour's manger are preserved in a silver urn. St. Lorenzo, a mile from the town, is a very plain-looking edifice. Here we find the Campo Santo, or cemetery. The graves are covered with large blocks of stone. St. Bessoriana is also called the Church of the Holy Cross of Jerusalem, from the fact that a piece of the cross is preserved here. Besides the letters INRI, some thorns, and a pail. St. Sebastian in the suburbs, one of the most ancient Roman churches, is built over the great catacombs, in which 174,000 Christians were buried. The catacombs are some stories deep, and extend over a large area. All the above-named basilicas are so empty, and stand on such lonely spots, that I was almost afraid to visit them alone. The handsome church of Santa Maria in Trastevere contrasts strangely with the quarter of the town in which it lies. This part of Rome is inhabited by people calling themselves descendants of the ancient Trojans. Santa Maria ad Martires, or the Rotunda, once the Pantheon of Agrippa, is in better preservation than any other monument of ancient Rome. The interior is almost in its pristine condition. It contains no less than 15 altars. In this church Raphael is buried. The Rotunda has no windows, but receives air and light through a circular opening in the cupola. The best view of ancient Rome is to be obtained from the tower of the Senate House. From this place we see stretched out beneath us Mount Palatine, the site of ancient Rome, the Capitol, in the midst of the city, the Quirinal Hill, Monte Cavallo, with the summer residence of the Pope, the Esquiline Mount, the loftiest of the hills, Mount Aventine, the Vatican, and lastly Monte Testaccio, consisting entirely of broken pottery which the Romans throw down here. I also paid a visit to the Ponte Publicus, the most ancient bridge in Rome, in the neighborhood of which Horatius Clocles achieved his heroic action, and the Tullian prison, beneath the church of St. Joseph of Falignani, where Jugurtha was starved to death. The staircase leading up to the building is called the Steps of Sighs. The Capitol has unfortunately fallen into decay. We can barely distinguish a few remains of temples and other buildings. Of the graves of the Scipios I could discover also little more than the site, the subterranean passages are nearly all destroyed.